One peaceful morning in the forest, Mr. Bear walked into the kitchen, opened the cupboard, and planned to treat himself to some honey, his absolute favorite treat. But there wasn't a single drop left. Mr. Bear's eyes widened. He scratched his head and rummaged through all the shelves, but the honey was gone. He sighed. Oh no, all gone. Unable to resist his craving, he decided to head into the forest to find more. Mr. Bear put on his hat, slipped on his sandals, and marched out with a single goal: honey. After walking a bit, Mr. Bear suddenly stopped. In the gentle breeze, he caught a familiar sweet smell. That's right, the scent of honey. His eyes lit up. On a tall tree nearby, a golden beehive dangled. And inside, it must be full of delicious honey. Without hesitation, Mr. Bear stretched out his paw, even sticking his big foot into the hive, hoping to grab some. Honey, he murmured, nearly drooling with hunger. But just as he touched inside, a buzzing sound rang out, and from the hive, an angry bee flew straight out. Mr. Bear hadn't even touched a drop of honey yet when a sharp buzzing sounded close to his ear. A tiny bee flew out of the hive, looking very annoyed. Hey, Bear, stay away from my hive, the bee shouted. This isn't your honey. Mr. Bear was surprised, then annoyed. A tiny little bee dared to yell at him. He straightened up, crossed his arms, and looked at the bee challengingly. Look here, he growled. I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you. If I want honey, I'll take it. Who's going to stop me? Then he waved his paw. Buzz off, trying to mimic the bee's buzz, but it sounded more grumpy than cute. Ignoring the warning, Mr. Bear stuck his paw back into the hive, and then, zing! The tiny bee, quick as lightning, flew straight at him and stung him right on the nose. Ow, my nose! He yelled, jumping up and clutching his aching nose. His eyes turned red, tears streaming down, not just from pain, but from anger too. Oh no, that tiny bee dared to sting me. Mr. Bear growled like thunder. I'll teach her a lesson. He looked around for something to fight back with. And a plan for revenge began to form in his mind. What seemed like a simple matter was about to explode into a big battle. Mr. Bear was furious. His nose was red and burning, painful and raw. Unbelievable, he hissed. A tiny little bee dared to sting me. I can't let this go. He looked around, and there, a fallen tree branch nearby, big and sturdy, as if made to be a club. Perfect, Mr. Bear muttered, lifting the stick with fiery eyes. Come here. Come here now. I'll teach you a lesson, he shouted, swinging wildly through the air, trying to hit the bee. But the bee was too fast, flying in circles, teasing him by darting up and down. The more Mr. Bear swung, the more the bee dodged, and the angrier he got. Crah! I will crush you, he roared. Suddenly, the little bee flew back into the hive. Ha! Got you trapped! Mr. Bear laughed slyly, eyes blazing like he was about to win. Without hesitation, he raised his stick and smash! He hit the hive hard. 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, smash, smash, smash! The hive trembled, wobbled, and then shattered into pieces. Honey splattered everywhere, wax crumbled. And then a very different sound echoed. At first soft, then growing louder. Zzz, zzz, zzz. Mr. Bear froze, eyes wide. What's that? The buzzing wasn't just one bee, but a whole swarm. Wave after wave, clusters of angry bees poured out of the smashed hive. The real storm was just beginning. Mr. Bear swallowed hard. Before him, a winged storm was forming. A huge swarm of bees flying out of the broken hive, buzzing angrily like thunder on a summer noon. Hey, wait a minute. He took a step back, still holding the stick. But it was too late. Zzz! The whole sky before him darkened with bees. Tiny as they were, they now looked like a giant army, ready to strike back. Zing! One bee zoomed in and stung Mr. Bear's ear. Zing! Zing! Several more targeted his elbow and cheeks. Ow! Oh my God! Mr. Bear yelled, dropping the stick and turning to run. But there was no escape. The swarm chased closely behind, a buzzing, angry cloud. They stung his legs, arms, back, and especially his poor, already swollen nose. Mr. Bear ran, screamed, and frantically waved his paws, trying to shoo the bees away. But it was useless. There were too many, and they were too fast. Through bushes and over tree roots, he raced toward home, leaves slapping his fur, thorns scratching him. Finally, after a chaotic escape, Mr. Bear reached his door and bam! Slammed it shut behind him, panting, aching all over. But the story wasn't over yet. Inside the little house, Mr. Bear leaned against the door, panting like he'd just run a marathon. His whole body ached, his fur was a mess, and especially, His famous nose was now swollen as big and red as a carrot. Gasping and groaning, he heard a familiar voice from behind. Losing your temper again? Huh? It was Mrs. Bear, standing in the kitchen holding a small jar. Mr. Bear turned around, face twisted. Um, I just wanted some honey. Mrs. Bear sighed, stepped over, and gently sat beside him. I told you, every time you lose your temper, you get into trouble. And the honey? There's plenty in the cupboard, right behind the bag of flour. Mr. Bear blinked in surprise. What? There's honey already in the house? Mrs. Bear shook her head, both amused and pitying. She opened the jar and started applying medicine to each bee sting. This is bee sting medicine. Luckily, I had it ready. Because I knew you'd get angry again. Mr. Bear nodded softly, eyes downcast, voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry? Mrs. Bear smiled, patted his head. Next time, instead of swinging a stick, just open your eyes and look carefully first. Mr. Bear smiled sheepishly. From that day on, whenever he wanted honey, he always checked every cupboard carefully before causing chaos in the forest.